I gripped my water glass so hard my knuckles turned white, but I refused to let my mother see how her words sliced through me. Amanda, you'll never be as good as your sister. The chandelier caught the crystal and threw fragments of light across the tablecloth, but the air around us felt heavy. It was Sierra's promotion dinner, a Wednesday night gathering my parents insisted on, even though I'd just come off a 10-hour workday. I sat across from Sierra in her crimson dress, her hair perfectly styled, looking every bit the golden daughter. My father cleared his throat, his eyes avoiding mine. Your mother's right. Sierra is on track for vice president before 30. Different paths. I looked at my mother wearing the pearl necklace I had given her the previous Christmas, the one she only ever seemed to wear for Sierra's milestones. Something inside me cracked. I reached into my purse, pulled out the mortgage statement I'd been carrying for days, and set it on the table. I've been paying your bills for 2 years, I said evenly, including this house. My mother blinked, then waved her hand like she always did, dismissive, impatient. That's what family does. Sierra needs to focus on her career. I remembered Sierra's college graduation when my parents handed her the keys to a new car, while I got a coffee mug with my university logo. You're already established, my mother had said, as if I didn't deserve more. 2 years ago, when they first asked me for help with the mortgage, I thought it was temporary. Just one payment, they said, but months turned into years, and I had quietly covered expense after expense. That night at the dinner table, I finally spread out my receipts, bank statements, transfer confirmations. I've supported plenty. I'm not your ATM. My father's face reddened. Your sister's at a critical point in her career, and I'm at a critical point in my patience. I cut him off. Sierra's face clouded with confusion, but she didn't say much. My mother's eyes narrowed, her tone sharp. Family supports. Family. Why are you being selfish? Because I want a future too, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Then I gathered my purse. I'll be taking a break from family dinners and family payments. Her face hardened into something unrecognizable. You'll regret this. Family is all we have. Then I guess I have nothing, I said, and walked out. A week passed before my phone lit up with my mother's name. She needed help with tax paperwork, since you're so good with numbers. While sorting through the mess on her desk, I found something that made my stomach twist. Sierra's student loan statement paid with a transfer from my account. I flipped through more pages, car payments, credit card bills, designer clothes. Nearly $20,000 of loans, thousands more for a car, almost $10,000 on credit cards. And all of it traced back to me. My parents appeared in the doorway as I held the papers. My mother's pearl necklace gleamed against her blouse. Did you find the mortgage interest forms? She asked, her voice carefully controlled. You used my money to pay Sierra's loans, her car, her cards. My voice sounded distant even to me. You were helping the family, she replied smoothly. Sierra's career is demanding. She needs freedom to build it. And I don't, I asked, trembling with rage. You're stable, my father said, as though that settled everything. Reliable. Sierra finally looked up from her phone. I didn't ask for this, she murmured. The total hit me like a fist, $61,000. All while I still carried my own student debt. When my mother casually mentioned Sierra's upcoming wedding and told me I would help cover it, something inside me solidified. I was done. That evening, I sat with Diane, my closest colleague, showing her the ledger I had built from my receipts. She studied it, then looked me in the eye. Amanda, this isn't family support. This is exploitation. The word landed heavy, undeniable. Exploitation. That night, I drove home in silence, clutching the folder of evidence, and asked myself the question that had been building for months. What do you do when the people who should love you unconditionally only value what you can give them? At work, the following week, my phone buzzed nonstop with calls from cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. My mother had organized a family reunion without telling me, and now the whispers were spreading. The emails all carried the same message, thinly disguised: the family needed help. And of course, I was expected to provide it. I silenced my phone and pushed it face down on my desk. Diane leaned over the cubicle wall. Avoiding someone, she asked. "My mother wants me to fund a reunion," I said, rubbing my temples. Diane shook her head. After everything, the nerve. Later that evening, I scrolled through Facebook. A photo froze me in place: my parents and Sierra, posing in front of the Las Vegas sign, cocktails in hand. The timestamp showed it was taken the same weekend I had worked overtime to cover their emergency property tax payment. They had gone to Vegas with my money, while telling me they were barely scraping by. Sleep became a stranger after that. At night, I lay awake calculating numbers: how much I'd given, how much I'd lost, how little remained. My boss noticed my exhaustion when I missed a deadline for the first time in years. I began keeping a journal documenting every call, every request, every dollar. The pages filled with proof of a pattern I could no longer deny. One Tuesday evening, I was leaving the office when I heard a voice. "Amanda." It was Uncle Frank, my mother's brother, his weathered face etched with concern. "You've missed the last few gatherings. That's not like you." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. He studied me a long moment. "I always thought you were the backbone of this family. Now I'm wondering if they've been taking advantage of that strength." His words landed with unexpected weight, and I blinked back tears. The following Saturday, I visited my parents' kitchen. Sierra sat at the counter, flipping through bridal magazines while my mother circled venues in red pen. Without looking up, she said, "The country club deposit is due next week. Sierra deserves the perfect celebration. You can cover it." The command, not request, cut through me like a blade. I felt something snap cleanly inside. "I'm not paying another cent," I said, my voice level, unwavering. The room went silent. Sierra's head jerked up. My mother froze, pen hovering. "Don't be ridiculous," she said at last, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. "I've paid the mortgage, her loans, her car, her credit cards. I'm finished." For once, the words could not be twisted back at me. My mother's mouth opened and closed, searching for the usual manipulations. But I saw them clearly now: the guilt, the comparisons, the insults wrapped as concern. I had been financing my own mistreatment. That night, Diane spread spreadsheets across her dining table, a calculator in hand. "Without their expenses," she said, circling a number, "you could pay off your student loans in 3 years instead of 15. The figure stunned me. A future I hadn't dared imagine. Uncle Frank called soon after. "I spoke with your mother. She's not happy." "I know." "Good," he said firmly. "Sometimes family needs to learn hard lessons. I'm proud of you." The next morning, I marched into the bank and requested every transaction printout from the past 2 years. Hours later, I discovered something even worse. My father had a hidden account with a healthy balance, completely contradicting the story of hardship they'd fed me. They had money all along while I drained myself dry. That evening, my mother called. "We're having an emergency family responsibility meeting tomorrow," she announced sharply. The mortgage payment didn't arrive. "I told you I'm done paying," I said, calm as stone. "This isn't a game, Amanda. Be here at 6. I hung up and looked at the stack of evidence on my table. For the first time, I realized I held every card. The next evening, I arrived 15 minutes early, binder in hand. My parents sat at opposite ends of the dining table, like monarchs awaiting a subject. Sierra scrolled idly on her phone between them. Without a word, I set the binder in the center and opened it. "Time to go through everything I've paid for over the past 2 years," I said. My voice sounded cool, almost businesslike. Page by page, I laid it out: 24 mortgage payments, nearly $29,000. Sierra's student loans, $19,400. Car payments, $3,600.
Credit card bills $9,200. That makes $61,000. I finished sliding the summary page forward. Sierra's phone slipped from her hand. That's more than I make in 3 months, she whispered. She looked from the binder to our parents, shock widening her eyes. I had no idea. My mother crossed her arms, her lips pressed thin. You offered to help. I have proof for every dollar, I said, dropping a folder of receipts beside the binder. Would you like me to read them one by one? For once, they had no quick response. Sierra stared at the statements, her voice breaking. Mom said you were happy to help. She said you wanted to. I laughed bitterly, happy I still have my own student loans. I've skipped medical care because I couldn't afford it. There was never extra money. The doorbell rang just then. My parents exchanged uneasy glances. We're in the middle of something, my mother snapped. That would be Uncle Frank, I said. I asked him to join. And when he walked into the room, his voice booming with calm authority, I finally felt I was no longer standing alone. Uncle Frank settled into the chair beside me, his presence grounding me. My mother's face tightened, her lips a thin line. Why is he here? She demanded. Because I'm done having these conversations in the dark, I said. Uncle Frank glanced at the binder. I see Amanda's showing you the numbers. I suspected something was wrong. Family helps each other in emergencies, not as a permanent arrangement. What you've been doing to her isn't right, Elaine. The silence that followed pressed heavy on the air. My mother's gaze flickered from me to her brother, her carefully crafted narrative unraveling. Sierra shifted uncomfortably. Jenna asked me yesterday why Amanda never comes to family events anymore. She seemed worried, like she knew something was wrong. Our friends don't understand our dynamics, my mother replied quickly, but her voice lacked conviction. Uncle Frank leaned forward. The Hendersons called me last week. They've noticed too. They asked if it was true you were having money problems while spending on luxury trips. My father bristled. That's none of their business. But then Sierra's phone pinged. She glanced at the screen, her face draining of color. It's from the mortgage company, she whispered. They're sending a late notice. My parents' masks slipped. My father slumped in his chair. My mother's composure cracked. And for the first time, I didn't rush to fix it. 2 days later, I sat across from them again, this time in the kitchen. The light slanted across the table, catching the pile of unpaid bills they tried to conceal beneath cookbooks. My father slid a paper toward me, rehearsed sincerity painted across his face. Amanda, we understand your concerns. We want to acknowledge your contributions. Families should support one another. We have a compromise, my mother added smoothly. If you resume the mortgage payments, we'll make sure everyone knows how much you've helped. Sierra will too. I almost laughed. Recognition in exchange for continued servitude. I've been paying for the privilege of being disrespected, I said, my voice calm. That arrangement is over. They tried again, my father reaching for my hand. Think about what you're risking. Family relationships can't be repaired once they break. I am being reasonable, I said, pulling my hand away. For the first time in years. The next morning, I handed in my resignation. I had accepted a position in Seattle as a software architect with a salary $33,000 higher than what I made in Austin. Without draining myself for my parents, I would save over $3,000 each month. When I told them, their faces paled. You can't just leave, my mother said. I can, I replied simply. That evening, Uncle Frank sent a text, everyone's here ready when you are. I drove to the restaurant he'd reserved, binder still in my bag. The private room buzzed with conversation, cousins, aunts, uncles, people I hadn't seen in months. Sierra sat at the head of the table in a cream dress, radiant as always. My parents hovered near the doorway, confusion etched on their faces. I walked straight to Sierra and set a wrapped gift box in front of her. Open it, I said loudly enough for the room to fall silent. She peeled back the silver paper, revealing the leather-bound portfolio of receipts and statements. As she flipped through the pages, her smile faltered. Her hands trembled. $61,000, she whispered. It's all there, I said. Every mortgage payment, every loan, every credit card bill. That's my gift to you, the truth. Gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Patricia clutched her pearls. Martha, is this true? My mother's face turned crimson. My father stared at the floor. Sierra stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. How could you? She demanded, her voice breaking. She turned to me, eyes brimming with tears. I never knew you cared so much for me. From now on, live for yourself, she whispered, her hand brushing mine. The room erupted in murmurs as aunts and uncles pressed my parents for answers. For the first time, the spotlight turned on them, not me. I felt something inside me uncoil, a knot of resentment loosening. Later that week, I learned through Uncle Frank that my parents were considering selling their house. Without my contributions, they couldn't manage the mortgage. Part of me felt pity, but a larger part felt free. In my apartment, I sealed boxes with black marker labels, kitchen bedroom undecided. Among the things I packed, I found an old family photo album. Smiling faces at birthdays and vacations stared back at me, familiar yet distant. I closed it and slipped it into the undecided box, unsure if I wanted to carry those memories forward. Seattle awaited a clean start 3,000 miles away. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight on my shoulders lifting. 6 months later, the morning light streamed through the wide windows of my Seattle apartment, painting golden stripes across the small dining table. I glanced at my phone and smiled. The balance on my student loan app had just dropped by another $2,400. Without mortgage payments from my parents, without credit card bailouts for Sierra, I was finally watching my own debt shrink. Every dollar went toward building my life, not propping up theirs. My laptop chimed with an incoming call. Diane's face appeared on the screen, her familiar Atlanta kitchen in the background. Look at you, she said, sipping coffee. Seattle suits you. You seem lighter. I straightened my shoulders unconsciously. I closed 2 big projects this quarter. My team lead says I'm on track for a promotion by December. And no one's stealing credit for your work this time? Diane teased. I laughed, a real laugh that bubbled from deep in my chest. It feels strange not having to downplay my success. She tilted her head. And that hiking group you mentioned, we're planning a trip to Mount Rainier next month. I hesitated, then added softly, I've been seeing someone. Nothing serious, but I'm allowing the possibility. Her smile widened. That's the real victory. That weekend, I slipped into a sage green dress for my company's dinner. Adjusting my gold necklace in the mirror, I caught my reflection, shoulders back, chin high, eyes clear. The woman staring back at me was no longer hunched, apologizing for existing. She was claiming her space. The banquet hall buzzed with chatter. My department head waved me forward. There she is, she announced to the group. Amanda's client satisfaction scores were the highest in the company this quarter. The Reynolds account specifically requested her for their next phase. Applause rose around me. My cheeks warmed, but I didn't deflect. Thank you, I said simply. I'm proud of the work we've done. Later, over dessert, a woman beside me asked casually, Do you have family here? The question no longer tightened my stomach into knots. I buttered my roll evenly. My parents and I are taking space. My sister and I are finding a more honest relationship. Families can be complicated, she said kindly. Yes, I agreed, and sometimes they're exactly what they seem. The following weekend, Uncle Frank and Diane flew to Seattle. We gathered in my living room, takeout boxes scattered across the coffee table. Uncle Frank raised his glass of Pinot Noir. To Amanda, he said, who proved it's never too late to choose your real family. Diane grinned, lifting her glass. To building the family you choose, not just accepting the one you're born into. The words sank deep into my bones. For the first time in my life, I felt surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I provided. One Tuesday, an unexpected email appeared in my inbox. Sierra. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won. I took over Mom and Dad's mortgage payments last month, she wrote. They weren't happy. Dad suggested I ask you to help until I get established. I told him I've been established for years, just never financially independent. That's changing now. It's harder than I expected, but also more satisfying. I think I understand now what you've been trying to tell me. I read the last lines twice. Mom and Dad want to visit you. I told them that's your decision. They don't understand why you won't just let bygones be bygones. I'm starting to. I'd like to visit if you're open to it, just me. My reply was short but sincere. Not ready for Mom and Dad, but I'd love to show you Seattle in the spring. When I closed my laptop, I sat in silence, wondering where the line lay between forgiveness and self-protection. Could I ever rebuild with my parents, who had shown no willingness to change? Or should I nurture only the relationships built on respect? The answer wasn't clear, but one truth was, my life was finally my own. And for the first time, the future didn't terrify me. It beckoned. Spring arrived in Seattle with blossoms curling along sidewalks and soft rains that gave way to golden afternoons. I had begun carving a rhythm in this new life work that challenged me friends who celebrated me hikes that left me breathless with views stretching miles beyond what I thought possible. Every morning when I opened my blinds, I saw possibility instead of obligation. One Saturday, I unpacked the last of my moving boxes. At the bottom, wrapped in old newspaper, I found the photo album I'd labeled Undecided. My hands hovered over it before opening the cover. Faces smiled up at me. Holidays, birthdays, Sierra's school recitals. We looked happy, and maybe we were once. But I understood now that the price of those smiles had always been uneven. Closing the album, I set it on a shelf. Not forgotten, but no longer dictating my present. A few weeks later, I stood at Mount Rainier with Diane and my new hiking group. The mountain loomed massive, its snowcap gleaming against a flawless blue sky. I thought of the years I had spent in Austin buried under expectations, shrinking myself to fit into a role my parents demanded. Now, the air tasted of pine and freedom. I breathed deeply, savoring it. That evening, my phone buzzed with another message from Sierra. She had managed to refinance the mortgage and was learning slowly how to live within her means. I'm stumbling a lot, she admitted, but for once, they can't run to you. And I think that's forcing me to grow. Her words carried something new: responsibility, maybe even gratitude. When I told Diane about it, she smiled knowingly. Sometimes people only change when the safety net disappears. I nodded. I just wish I'd learned sooner that it wasn't my job to hold the net forever. Summer unfolded with small milestones. My student loans shrank further. I earned my promotion in December exactly as promised. I went on my first real vacation that I paid for myself, no guilt, no strings. Just me walking along a rocky Oregon beach with the wind tangling my hair, smiling at the thought that every wave crashing against the shore felt like punctuation to the sentence of my freedom. And then one morning in January, Sierra arrived in Seattle. She stepped off the plane with a small suitcase, no entourage, no demands. Just my sister looking tired, but lighter somehow. Over coffee in a quiet cafe, she told me she was determined to handle her own finances from now on. I won't lie, it's hard, but I'd rather struggle on my own than live off someone else's sacrifice. Her honesty stirred something I hadn't felt in years: cautious hope. We spent the weekend walking through Pike Place Market, tasting cherries, watching fishmongers toss salmon through the air. At night, we sat by the Water City lights, reflecting across the waves. For once, our conversations weren't about her career or my supposed shortcomings. They were about books we wanted to read, places we wanted to see, and memories that made us both laugh. When she hugged me goodbye at the airport, her voice was quiet. Thank you for showing me what real independence looks like. I stood there long after her flight departed, the words echoing in my chest. Maybe we couldn't rewrite the past, but perhaps we could build a different kind of future, one with honesty at its core. As for my parents, they never changed. Even now, messages filtered through relatives full of veiled reproach still arrived from time to time. But I no longer felt the pull to answer. Some doors once closed need to remain shut. On a rainy Sunday, Diane and Uncle Frank joined me in my apartment again. We toasted with glasses of wine, laughter bouncing off the walls. Uncle Frank raised his glass. To Amanda, who proved that family isn't about obligation, but about choice.
I felt the truth of it settle deep. The family I had chosen, friends, mentors, even a sister learning to grow, was enough. More than enough.
Sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself is stepping away from those who use your love as currency. I had learned that hard truth, but I had also learned this: setting boundaries isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of one worth living. So if you've ever felt trapped by expectations that suffocate your spirit, know this: you have permission to choose differently. You can step into a future where your worth isn't measured in dollars or sacrifices, but in the life you build for yourself. And trust me, the view is worth it. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to share it with someone who might need the reminder. Subscribe for more stories like this and comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear your perspective.